not encourage people to show them any foreign documents. Additionally, do not show ICE any false document. That in itself is going to be another problem for you. Avoid signing any documents without understanding them. They will oftentimes give you documents to sign, like, for example, if they want you to appear in court, they can give you what is called a notice to appear, and usually there's a place for your signature. But if you don't understand the contents of the document, do not sign it until you can get legal advice on what it's all about. It is also important to record either mentally or if you can write it, what's happening to you at the time. You know, very, very important. And as usual, your immigration status is really what they're trying to verify. If you know that you're not in status, I will tell people, do not admit anything. Keep silent and let them do their job. Because if it is that they're going to take you into custody, you can't talk your way out of it. Mm-hmm. You know, I tell people that all the time. They've already decided who and what they're there for and what they're going to take in terms of action. But the main thing is keep a plan in place with your family, because too often we see people get picked up and their families have no idea on how to find them. You know, there is a way that you can find persons who are detained, but this administration has become very petty, as I would say, and some of these resources are no longer there for you to access. So you need to put a lawyer in your back pocket, as we would say. And the sad part about all of this that we're talking about is that the people who can least afford lawyers are the ones who are going to be subjected to encounters by ICE. And that's why I commend you guys for putting this on and for putting the information, the good information out there, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Thank you. There's one question. Suppose ICE comes to your door at 2 a.m. in the morning and pounds on the door. Do you have to let them in?
Absolutely not. They require a warrant. Judicial warrant, not an administration type warrant that's signed by a manager or somebody from ICE. It has to be a judicial warrant to enter your place of residence. And you should ask them for that if they're insisting on coming in. And also tell your children, because they have all kinds of methods that they use to try and enter the house. You as the adult, you're not there, they'll come, they'll knock, or your child will come to the door, they'll say, hey, open the door for us, we're the police, we need to come, and the child gets scared, opens the door, and that's another avenue for them to access you. You should demand that they produce a warrant, and ask the agent to slide the warrant under the door so you can read it, or hold it up to the window so you can read it or inspect it. If the ICE agent does not have a warrant, you have the right to refuse entry to your home, politely but firmly inform them that they do not have consent, or you do not give them consent to enter and to search your home.
Thank you so much. There's another thing. When you're detained by ICE, a lot of people don't understand that we have due process rights. But what happens if you're detained by ICE?
Well, it all depends on why you're detained too. But first and foremost, you have a process where you can actually seek a bond to be released from ICE custody. There are some persons who are not eligible for bond because of whatever the situation is that they're being held for, whether it's a criminal offense in their background that divests the judge of jurisdiction. So there are certain people who are mandatorily required to be detained, and the judge really doesn't have any say in that. But you can also speak with the ICE officials and ask them, because they themselves can release you from custody. But the important thing is that they're going to present to you a document called a notice to appear, which tells you why it is that they're trying to remove you from the country. And you will have some due process starting with that document wherein there are going to be allegations there, and you are going to have the choice to admit or deny the allegation. And some people, when they get caught up in detention, they just want to go. They just want to get out. They just want, not knowing that their potential relief from being deported or removed, depending what your situation is.
Yes.
So we would advise folks, if this document is presented to you, do not just go ahead and deal with it. Ask the judge for more time so you can seek the advice of an attorney, get some assistance in addressing the allegations. Even though it may look true, they might say, look, admit that you're from Jamaica, and or admit that you're from Trinidad or Guyana or Haiti or wherever. But making that admission gives them almost a free hand to send you there.
Yes.
Because the burden of proof is on them to show where you're actually from, where you have alienage from. So they're simple things it sounds like, but they're complicated things because it affects your case. Moving forward, you'll have the opportunity to have a hearing in front of a judge. Beyond the first hearing, they call a master hearing. They'll set an individual hearing to hear your case, whether you're applying for asylum, withholding of removal, cancellation of removal for certain persons. And the key is not to just give up and give in until you know what the options are. And another thing that I would encourage people to do is that also ask the judge what options you have for relief, because they are actually required to tell you what kind of options you may have or you can pursue. And last but not least, always bear in mind that you may be a U.S. citizen without documentation. We've seen a lot of people who have gotten caught up in immigration court deportation hearings, but it turns out by operation of law, they were U.S. citizens because their parents naturalized before they were 18 years old. And that's another kettle of fish, depending on what year and all of that stuff. But there are so many different options. You do have due process. However, understand that if you're in this country less than 2 years, they do not have to afford you due process. They do not have to make you go and see a judge. You can be expeditedly removed from this country. So another thing, if you're here over 2 years and you are out of status, make sure you have proof of that, to show them so you can actually get into that bay to get your due process.
Okay. And the final what if question, what to do if question is, what is the value of having a real ID if I stops you while driving?
The Real ID Act really was put into place years ago, and it's being fully effective now, where your government identification, meaning most likely a driver's license, has some hologram codes in it that shows that you have status to be here in the United States, because you could not have got that driver's license without showing that you had some status. Now, most states will condition the expiration of that driver's license on your status. For example, people who are here studying and they have to get a driver's license, they present their document for the duration of their study. Usually that's when the license expires. So they're trying to create a system, or they have created a system wherein they can rely on that driver's license to say what your immigration status is, because once you're out of that status, it would have expired. The other thing that we're facing now when you're talking about Real ID is that the administration has also ruled out the Alien Registration Act, where they're requiring persons here over 30 days to register and get fingerprinted if you have not been before previously. So they're putting in these measures. It kind of reminds me of what was happening in South Africa, what was happening during slavery.
Mhm.
You know, that identification of who you are, where you live, is going to be crucial moving forward, because as they ramp up their immigration enforcement, they're seeking easier ways to find people, and they're attaching criminal and civil penalties for people who are not registered.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we will have our question and answer sessions. Um, People who want to ask questions, they can put it in the chat. We will not entertain anything outside of the chat. And so let's go for the first one. For Ms. Clark, what advice would you give to students to ensure that they remain in good status during these difficult times?
So my advice too is that the students need to go to the international students office and work with the advisor, right? The best person to maintain your legal status as an international student, the main things you have to do is make sure you enroll in classes full time, which is a minimum of 12 credits per semester, and not work during the academic semester without authorization off campus. Now, every university that accepts international students has someone who works in the capacity of international students advising. The most effective way to make sure that you maintain your status is to comply with the advice that's given by that designated school official. And every university has one. So remain in school, do not work off campus without authorization, and go to your international students. Make sure you know who that international student advisor is. Ask them questions. Every university, and I know this is the DMV, so I know for sure every university in the DMV and nationwide, in order to legally take international students who are in CVIS, you have to have a designated school official and an alternate official. So stay in contact with those individuals and register according to the law. If you have issues, you need to inform them first. They're the ones who are in the best position to provide advice. But those are the two basic tenets that I was always told as a student. And I know our international student advisor preaches to the students regularly: register full time, and make sure you do not work without authorization.
Okay, thank you. Working on campus, though, there is availability of working on campus, and it does not contravene.
Right, but you can work on campus, but even on campus, you have to work within 20 hours and you have to have a social security number. So students cannot just take a position on campus without having a social security number. And it's a best practice to always make your international student advisor aware of everything you're doing. So for our students, when we have orientation in the fall and the spring, the students are we provide a full day orientation. And in addition to that, in regards to the work, we go through all the different sections, you know, OPT, CPT, H-1B, et cetera. But for on-campus work, the United States government requires you to have a social security number. So they have to have an offer letter, even though it's an on-campus employment. They take that to the Social Security office, and you have to have that social security number before you start working. So they can work on campus, but the reason why we tend to not have issues on campus is because we advise our students, no matter what you're doing, you check with your international student advisor first. So that's the best practice that works for me and seems to work for the other students we have. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Can I just jump in 1 minute? I'm sorry to step on your toes. One of the areas for international students that they need to be careful about coming from other countries, especially the Caribbean, drinking age. Drinking age in the Caribbean is 18 years old. Some countries are 16, believe it or not. When they come here, they need to be mindful of that they should understand that the drinking age in the USA is 21 years old in all states. And if they get caught underage drinking, it would violate, or they're charged with that as a crime or several other crimes, it would violate the terms of their student visa and they could be deported. So that's something, especially for college students, to bear in mind. Do not get involved in underage drinking.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The other question that I'd like to pose to you, Attorney Golding, is can ICE pick up children in the absence of parents?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The status is what's important. And you can think about it like this. Children who came across the border a few years ago were actually separated from their parents. And they're under the same sort of mandate in terms of immigration laws and qualifying to be in this country. But children can be picked up from school. We've seen attempts in some states for that, and especially in Chicago, I think there was some big resistance to ICE actually entering schools. Again, the sacred spaces that we usually think about. So the short answer is yes, and don't be naive. And again, put some plans in place if you need somebody to pick up your child at school, set up some guardianship or something so somebody can be in charge of that child if you're not able to go and get that child.
Yeah, we're seeing things that we've never seen before. I mean, this is unbelievable, you know. Father Constant, well, I already know the answer to this question, but somebody poses a question. Are there instances where ICE has invaded a church or holy space? And if yes, what is the religious community doing about this?
So right now we are preaching preparedness, being prepared. Even though we don't know exactly what's going to happen 6 months from now, but why wait? So we are encouraging our members to be prepared, those whom we know are facing arrest or deportation. So along with several members of my church, and we're going to have more people trained, I've attended several workshops on family preparedness for immigrant families at risk of profiling, detention, and deportation. And here I am thankful for the work of the Washington National Cathedral's Sanctuary Ministry and the Association of Haitian Professionals for their leadership in preparing for this moment, because it's something that they've been working on for some time, knowing what was to come. And so the work of training clergy and lay leaders to help individuals and families to plan in case they are arrested or deported has become more critical now than ever. And so we want at-risk individuals and families to put a plan together just in case. And so many families are concerned, as you know, as we all can imagine, about their children. Some of the children are born in the United States, but others in other places. That becomes a grave concern for families. And so as a parent, if I get picked up by ICE, what will happen to my children, as Mr. Golding was just talking about? And so we want to encourage individuals and families to make an emergency plan for your family. Make an emergency plan for your family. I just had that conversation with my wife recently, and I've been in this country for 17 years, since I was 17 years old. And now I'm actually walking around with my US passport wherever I go. And it's scary. And so we encourage families to, number one, gather important documents in a safe place, number one. Number two, create a list of emergency numbers, designate a power of attorney for their financial assets, and then make a care plan for their children. And I know Mr. Golding talked about some of those. And so to make sure that important documents are in a safe place, and tell family members, children, and other trusted friends where to find documents in an emergency: passports, birth certificates, A numbers and immigration documents, driver's license and state ID cards, social security card, medical information, health insurance cards, medication list, doctor's contact information, medical condition, because we are dealing with an administration that really is trampling on the rights of individuals. And then emergency phone numbers, family contacts, schools, childcare, after-school programs, doctors, attorney, emergency number for children to call if parents are detained, and then power of attorney for financial assets, bank accounts, credit cards, vehicles, real property, things like home and condo, personal property. And so without a power of attorney, and I know Mr. Golding can talk more on this, you may lose access to your financial assets if you are detained or deported. So this is all part of preparing individuals and families for what could happen. And then the care plan for your children. Identify a trusted relative or friend, legal status to take care of your children if you are detained or deported. And by adding this person to the children's emergency contacts for schools and childcare, make sure children know who can pick them up from school and who will care for them and have their phone numbers. And then appoint a standby guardian. And that's so important. Again, because we are dealing with language barriers. And when I talk about Haitians, talk about our Spanish-speaking community, it's critical that they appoint a standby guardian to care for children who can be available to care for their children. Of course, different states have different status when it comes to different jurisdictions as well. So it's critical that families, individuals appoint a standby guardian. A standby guardian can enroll children in school, obtain medical care for children. Without a standby guardian, children may be placed in foster care with guardians they do not know. So again, the Washington National Cathedral Sanctuary Ministry is willing to offer training for us to be better equipped to help families prepare for possible adverse immigration actions. The trainings involve step-by-step instructions on helping families to plan in case they are detained or deported.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, about a month and a half ago, I got a very frantic call from a friend of mine who stated that her cousin had entered Jamaica on her Jamaican passport. And when she was coming back into the United States, was interdicted. And that horrified me because I'd never heard of such a thing. And it forced me to go and do some research and realize that the law governing that says that you should leave the US with a US passport and come back into the US with a US passport. That was really the first time. And I've been an immigration practitioner for years. And that was the first time I was focused on that. I think what is happening is that they're using a lot of the laws that, nobody paid attention to really make an impact. What do you think about that, Attorney Golding? What's the story around that?
Well, that's the worst thing that we're facing right now is misinformation and how fast it travels. And as it travels, it gets more dissipated and more false, so to speak. I will declare on this forum that I have two passports. I have a Jamaican passport and I have a U.S. passport. There's a treaty an arrangement between the United States and some countries, including Jamaica, where you can maintain dual citizenship. The question of travel, and the rule is, yes, you're correct. It says you should leave on your U.S. passport and return on your U.S. passport. But the reason for having, per se, a Jamaican passport as a Jamaican citizen, you can use that to enter the country of Jamaica. You cannot use it to leave to come back to the U.S. But there's nothing illegal about you using it to enter Jamaica because it gives you the benefits of citizenship there, including nobody's telling you have 2 weeks to stay
in your own country.
You can work, you can do all these things. So there is some misinformation going about that they will not let you back into the U.S. That is not true. They must let you back. They can question you. They can ask you, but you're not doing anything illegal, and people should not be scared. And again, you have to go to the true source for the information because we know we're in a terrible, frightful time. And this is helping to fuel the fire when we have this sort of half-truth that is out there. And our community is taking it and running with it. And again, the Reverend really said some powerful things a while ago, and it all comes from his training that he has gotten in this area. Because I tell people all the while, immigration law especially is one of those things that there are a lot of people who have opinions on how it's to be done, and they don't have a law degree, but they should know that every box on those forms means something legally. So please, again, for those listening to us, seek out the advice of an attorney if you do have these questions and issues, and then don't go off what the village, what we call back home, the village lawyers and experts will tell you, because that will get you into some serious problems.
And even more, this webinar is not intended as a substitute for consulting.
Absolutely.
So, as you said, consult with an attorney. Okay. Let me see if there are any other questions. Could you please clarify if one must wait the full 5 years to file for naturalization, or if there's a way to expedite the process?
Okay, it all depends on how you got your green card.
Mm-hmm.
If you got your green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen and you're still married after 3 years, well, 2 years and 9 months actually, you can actually file for your U.S. citizenship. And bear in mind also that you would have had to spend at least 50% of the time inside of the U.S. Because a lot of people get the green card and they just flutter away back home to where they're from, and they stay out of the country for an inordinate amount of time, and that's another discussion. But if you got it through work, you got it through your parents per se, somebody will file for you, it's usually a 5-year wait. And during that 5 years or 3-year period, you have to make sure you maintain good moral character, and you have child support, you pay child support, you pay taxes, all of these things come into it. But there's also another aspect to it. If folks join the U.S. military, they get their green cards within a year. They can, if it's a time of conflict, you can almost get it immediately. You can get your citizenship. So there are several different tiers to you getting it. But there's no, it's not like you're trying to apply for a passport where you can probably pay an extra fee and expedite the processing of that passport. You have to wait within the legal time frame that's set for naturalization. And remember also, some people are naturalized by what we call operation of law. And that is where your parents naturalized before you're 18 years old. Depending on which parents you live with and the time it happened, you can actually apply for a certificate of citizenship, or you can apply for a U.S. passport providing the proof.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, if someone got married, but their 6-month visa has expired, and I'm thinking it's the I-94, should they return to their home country, or are there other steps they should take?
Well, if they got married to a U.S. citizen,
Right.
There's an option for them to apply to adjust here in the United States. However, bear in mind with this new administration, if you are given 6 months to remain in the country and you overstay more than a day, you are actually subject to being detained or put in immigration proceedings. However, if you do have an adjustment of status application to your spouse file, usually you won't get caught up once you can prove that you're trying to adjust your status through the marriage. However, if you got married to, per se, a green card holder, you cannot stay in this country and adjust your status. What will happen in that case is, if you overstay between 6 months and a year and you do leave, you'll be subjected to a 3-year ban from coming back to the United States. If you overstay beyond 1 year, you'll be subjected to a 10-year ban from coming back into the United States. So we never encourage people to stay beyond the time that they're allowed, because you're just going to complicate your life. Unless you are, as I said, you're here on a fiancé visa, and then you have to get married within a certain time and then file your document, or if you're married to a U.S. citizen. And again, it all goes back, consult with an attorney, because as our moderator said, this is not a substitute for legal advice because everybody's situation is different, believe it or not.
One of the things I've realized is that some people also think that the visa is the time that they have to stay in the country, not the I-94. They don't understand that it's the time you're given for the visit, not the 10-year time period or the 2-year time period of the visa.
And once you violate that, your visa is actually canceled.
Canceled, yes, yes. All right. Another person has asked if a permanent resident travels for a 2-week vacation, could they face issues? Could they face issues re-entering the United States? And of course, we know that yes, they can if they've committed a crime or
if they travel for 1 day and they've committed certain offenses or there are other issues, yeah, you can have problems. And sometimes you see people being drawn in for what they call secondary inspection, because there's something that pops up or they have additional questions they want to ask you about your time out of the United States, whether it's 1 day, whether it's 1 week, whether it's 6 months. And usually if you stay out 6 months, it raises a red flag. If you stay out a year, it's even a higher red flag where they can determine that you possibly abandon your residency in the United States because you don't want to live here. You're gone for a year. But people have to understand, again, there are ways if you need to stay out for a longer period of time, you can apply for a permit or for permission to stay out for that time. And it's very important that you just not run the gambit and try and figure out, well, I'll just fool them when I'm coming back in. They know everything. They know the day you leave, the day you return, with other countries you went to. Don't try and pull the wool over their eyes because they never ask a question they don't know the answer to.
That's right. In regard to the treaty that you had mentioned before, someone asks, does that treaty extend to the Jamaican passport and its relationship to the CARICOM designation as a document?
Well, the CARICOM designation just means that you have the freedom to travel throughout the CARICOM nations without the need for a visa. And there's also arrangements between the CARICOM countries about working in the different countries without a permit and all these things. It really has nothing to do with the US side. If you get a CARICOM passport and it's from Jamaica, for example, it's just like your regular Jamaican passport in terms of the US immigration laws. And, people don't understand. All these systems are linked, so if you do have 2 passports, it's in the system. They know. And there are those designated countries to which you're allowed to have 2 passports. But as our moderator said before, you're traveling into the US, you use your US passport to come into its borders. You're traveling out of the US, you use your US passport to leave the country.
Okay. About 15 years ago, I was talking to a prosecutor, an immigration counsel, who raised the topic of birthright citizenship. And I remembering at that time, oh, that will never happen. Oh, that won't even be an issue. And so now the whole issue of birthright citizenship has come to the fore. Why? Or should we be concerned about birthright citizenship? Counsel?
Well, anything that this administration does, you should be concerned. Never say never, because we never thought we would be where we are. Although constitutionally protected, and we've seen judges express opinions on that, bear in mind that nearly half of the countries in the world do not have birthright citizenship.
Yep.
A lot of people are going to be surprised. Reverend, I can tell you of a story. I represented a young man that they're trying to send back to Haiti, but he was not born in Haiti. He was born in the Bahamas, but because his parents were Haitians, he never acquired Bahamian citizenship. And now they're trying to deport him back to Haiti because his parents are Haitian, and he has never been to Haiti in his life. Sounds ridiculous. but it's true. So people should be very concerned. They should keep on top of it. They should be talking to their congresspeople, their senators, even if they're in the minority, plus in the majority, because a lot of these people you hear espousing this don't realize that some of their closest friends would not qualify to be U.S. citizens if this were to come into effect.
Okay. It seems as if all of these last questions are for you, counsel, are for you, counsel. But let's keep going. Can you apply to join the Army or Air Force from Jamaica if you have flight training?
No,
No.
you have to have status to join the U.S. Army.
Mhm.
You have to have some sort of status that they recognize. I know a lot of our dreamers were able to join the military, make big contributions to this country in the medical field during COVID. Our dreamers have proven their mettle in terms of contribution to the economy of the United States, social life in the United States. And again, this is one of our biggest concerns as immigration practitioners, because the dreamers have been dragged across the coal. You know, immigrants are the lowest hanging fruit in the political warfare that's out there. And again, their status is again in question. But no, you're not allowed to do that. You know, I know it might be an idea that people have that they might be able to get status through that. That might have been 2 years ago, but not anymore.
And this one is a little bit off because we're talking, about the British, but the last question is, can a Jamaican hold a Jamaican and British passport if their grandparents have British citizenship?
Well, I don't profess to know the immigration laws
don't know
as
this.
it relates, but there was a cutoff period for citizens of the Commonwealth getting British citizenship. I know there is a process for what they commonly call in Canada landing or maintaining or acquiring your British citizenship, just like there's a process here in the United States. But the one thing about being a British citizen, though, I'll tell you as it relates to American immigration law, is that there's a visa waiver program where if you're a British citizen, you don't necessarily need a visa to come to the United States to visit. So, you know, the United States has these arrangements with a couple of different countries, but I can see that shrinking in the next few years. Right now, we're looking at policy changes maybe coming into effect with regards to certain Caribbean countries. About 4 is on the list right now, who they're identifying as benefiting from Cuban medical missions.
Yes.
So everything is being looked at, and I'm telling you, it's a time that we never imagined. America's on its head, upside down, and we all need therapists and reverends like this to really comfort the soul, because there's only so much you can do.
It's not years, brother. It's months, probably.
Centuries, probably. well, the effect,
Effect.
yeah, we're hoping it'll be months, but centuries to come, the effect of these just changes. And the unique thing about it is that we were told it was coming.
Yes.
Was told. So hindsight is 20/20 for some people.
Okay, so I really, really think that this just was a wonderful panel discussion. Father Constant, all the good work that you're doing, the yeoman's effort in making sure that not only your congregants or your constituents, but generally the immigrant community is being given the knowledge of what to do. And I really commend you for what you're doing. And I really also think Pamela, Miss Clark, you've done a wonderful job. Are you still there? I think she's left. Has really done a good job in navigating that, the education space that we're people who are in college and that kind of thing. And of course, the incomparable Attorney Golding, your vast knowledge of the subject area. And, you know, this has been a a good first step towards us understanding, you know, the problems we're having. But how does the Caribbean prepare during this time? You know, um, C-PAC, it would be wonderful to have kind of a legal minds to have a consortium for the Caribbean region for us to get ahead of this or to do something about this. What do you, those remaining on the panel, what do you think?
Well, I'll let the Reverend go first, since I ate up so much of the time. Reverend?
Recently, the Haitian clergy in the community in the greater DC metropolitan area met with the Haitian ambassador, for instance, and one of the questions we asked him is, what is the Haitian government doing? Yes, here we are doing our best to walk alongside our siblings who are facing arrest and deportation. We are doing our best to help them prepare for what could happen. And we know many will be deported. We hope that, again, because the question becomes, do I leave the country ahead of that 6 months that I have, or do I wait and see what happens? So this is the time of fear and uncertainty that our brothers and sisters and siblings are dealing with right now. So that's why finding a way for us to walk alongside them right now and help them prepare for what's ahead, making sure that the important documents are filled and notarized is critical. And so in our conversation with the Haitian ambassador, we sent the message to the Haitian government. We are doing our part here. They need to do their part there as well. And so I'm hoping that the same message will get to the other governments, that our brothers and sisters and siblings are being treated unfairly, and their dignity is being trampled on. As nations, as where we were born and raised, we need to do a better job at preparing to receive them when the time comes. So that's the message that we've been sending, at least to the Haitian government, through the Haitian ambassador.
Okay.
Well, for me, I think C-PAC is a very good start. It's where good information can be deposited. It can become a repository for resources, and that's what we need. I think the biggest fear is fear itself right now. A lot of things need to be clarified more publicly by recognized organizations, instead of, you know, these bloggers, these people just going out there. And sometimes, sadly, attorneys who are not qualified
Yes.
in the area. I've seen a lot of that, and they just lay it out there. This is not a money-making scheme.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a scheme to frighten people to come into attorney's office. But attorneys do and should know how immigration law is applied, and should be qualified to give people the proper advice. And sometimes you have to tell people what they don't want to hear.
That's
you
right.
know, and it's going to be hard choices. But on the other side of the spectrum, in terms of the government on the other end, the reality is that a lot of people are going to be sent home, and they need to be prepared both financially, with facilities, with psychological approaches to dealing with these people, because this is going to be traumatic in more than one way. And they need to make sure that these people who are coming home are not just let loose to their own devices in a place that they've probably not been for a number of years. And not only that, they're going to be stigmatized, because they are stigmatized. We coined a term a few years ago called involuntary returnees, because the use of the word deportee usually signals that the person did something wrong, is a criminal, all of this stuff, when it's so far from the truth, because the majority of people who would be deported under this scheme that is out by this administration, this increased enforcement, are not necessarily people with criminal offenses. It's just people who can't find their way out of the immigration maze that they found themselves in. So we ourselves here on this side of the shore should strive to educate the government that will be receiving these people that, look, it's not going to go away overnight, and you better be prepared. You better put out some resources, and you can't take a negative approach to these people coming in, because I've known people who have been removed or deported, and they've actually gone back to a situation where they could really put themselves back on their feet and do very well. But I've also known people who have been deported and are now walking the streets suffering from mental illness. So there has to be a broad brush approach.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I was talking with a healthcare professional just yesterday, and there was talk about the healthcare implications as well. Diseases, I mean, you know, communicable diseases being a big problem if people say, if some people are sent back. So as you said, we just really, those of us on this side of the shore need to be able to at least prepare the governments and the different, you know, entities that this is a real issue. Well, I have one last one. It's 7:20. This is from Ambassador Curtis Ward. Reverend Constant, has criticism of the Episcopal Church been handicapped in its mission to protect immigrants by the criticisms of the church?
Thank you, Ambassador Ward, for the question. Certainly the criticisms are there, and we are navigating through them. We know that we have a mandate, and our mandate is from our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so, yes, you may stop the grants. Yes, you may stop funding Episcopal migration ministries, but the work will continue. Somehow the work of working alongside our siblings will continue. And so I would say, yes, we need to pivot in terms of how best to do without federal grants. But we know that somehow, as long as we have the vision, and the vision is to work alongside, and it is to support our siblings who are suffering, who are living in fear, then we know God will provide. So I would say, yes, there has been some actions, and we have some of our important ministries like Episcopal Migration Ministries that has been doing amazing work over the years to help refugees resettle and so on and so forth. They have been impacted. But I would say, Ambassador, the word will continue. The work will definitely continue.
Great. Having spoken these last few minutes, someone asked, can we lobby the USA Senate to do this with dignity and have the country receiving deportees get financial help from the USA? Good luck with that.
Well, it's a question that is not new. It's something that has always been in the forefront from government to government relationships. But the ultimate responsibility for a person being removed is that person's country of citizenship. And they cannot refuse these folks coming in. And so they're going to have to do what they have to do to find the resources, because it will impact the country in one way or the other, negatively or positively. And, you know, I just want to say before we go, Ambassador Ward, I hope you feel better. I know you're chomping at the bits because you wanted to be here tonight. And you have been one of those stalwarts who have been putting out these issues and not burying, you know, encouraging people not to bury their heads in the sand, because we can't afford to do that at this time. We know better, so we'll do better, and we'll keep the fight. We're not afraid. We're not doing anything wrong. And many have gone before us whose shoulders we stand on. So we're in this new era, and yes, we have to meet it at the moment that it is. And this immigration issue is really on the conscience and the minds of many Americans who never thought it would come to this.
Okay. Well, thank you, folks. It appears as if we have no more questions. I will also lend my bit to say that Ambassador Ward has also been in the forefront of the immigration space. I mean, years ago when I met him, that was what he did. He was one of our premier immigration lawyers in this area. And so I know this topic is near and dear to his heart. And so I would like to thank everybody for being a part of this. And I hope we have shed some light on the situation, and that we will continue in our mission to educate and to have people understand what is going on. Pleasant good evening to all of us, and goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks,
you.
Wayne.
Great. Thank you.
Get out of this thing.